Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. I'm Maya Tusi and this is your latest news update from Scotland. Yes, the government crackdown on Christians has escalated, and now Christian pensioners are being arrested for simply praying or holding a silent vigil on the streets in Scotland. Of course, the same problem we've also been having in England, but the laws around this and the crackdown in Scotland is on a whole new level. You could be arrested for simply even making a joke. I mean, let alone obviously praying as a Christian. This is completely getting out of control. Of course, we're going to be talking about all this. We have one example we're going to show you as the video of the moment this woman was arrested for simply holding this sign. Coercion is a crime, here to talk only if you want. So she's not harassing anybody. We're going to give you guys the context, obviously, of what this is about. And then obviously the video when the police came and took her away, arrested her like she's a terrorist or something. There is obviously a backlash already, but there doesn't seem to be any appetite from the political establishment, even the opposition parties, to even raise this issue. We haven't really heard much from the so-called centre-right parties on this, those who are in parliament. But of course, we will get your reaction as well. So essentially, what you've been having is both in England and Scotland, abortion clinics now becoming heated, obviously, as a debate. And we don't really do, in this country, we don't really have people harassing people. For example, those who want to go to abortion clinics. And what we've had recently is a lot of people who are concerned, and they have their own religious views. They stand away from the clinics quietly. They either do silent prayer, because it's their view, right? And they are concerned about the unborn children who are being killed. Now, if you had people going outside the clinic, by the door, harassing women or attacking them or spitting or whatever, well, obviously that's against the law. You should be arrested for that. But that's not what's happening. Those who are simply silently praying in their head away from the clinic, or in this situation, someone held a sign quietly, not approaching anybody, not talking to anybody, not harassing anybody. But obviously, the police decided it's not a good idea. So let's go to the moment. Well, we have the video before the arrest where she's essentially just standing there, and then the police approaches her. That's it. That's all she was doing. Then the whole thing escalated because somebody clearly called the police, right? Because a Christian pensioner standing there is so dangerous. It's so scary. It's so intimidating. Her presence is provoking everybody. The hypocrisy of the system is, and I've said this many times, when we've had vicious protests, very violent protests outside schools by Islamic families and parents, because they said, our religious views, we don't like that you're teaching our kids sex education, right? They don't do that in the Middle East or North Africa, right? So when the Islamic parents and the Islamic community do it, and when they do mob rule, very vicious bullying, the authorities, the police, the council, the schools, everybody will say, oh, of course, we have to hear them out. You know, they have concerns. They have their own views. You know, they have every right to protest. They have every right to get us to change our policies. And they do change it. Obviously, those schools stop doing it. But there's one rule for one side and another for the other side. So let's go to the video of the moment this poor woman was actually arrested. And then we'll come back.
Are you familiar with that legislation about the public road? Yes. And you're aware that you're breaching that just now? Okay. 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 So within that legislation it does mention silent vigil. This would include that.
I'm often to speak to people, so it's not a silent vigil. Okay. People want to come and speak to me of their own religion. I'm not approaching anyone.
So you are aware of the legislation that said this is a restricted area for protests? So you're within this restricted area? You are aware of that?
Yes.
I'm going to charge you, but before I do so, I'll caution you. You're not obliged to say anything. Anything you do say will be noted down and may be used in evidence. The offence is that on this day and date you did involve yourself in a protest put you within a restricted zone that's likely to cause distress or harm to others. Contrary to Section 4 of the Abortion Services Scotland Safe Zones Act, Scotland Act 2024. Do you understand that charge? Do you wish to make any reply to that charge?
Explain the circumstances of the pension. I know you might feel otherwise. Okay, we can go after this, Mike. Okay. You understand?
Just step aside so I can get by.
Yes, her name is Rose Doherty, and her crime was what you saw. This is Scotland in 2025. It's the same place that would get the police to arrest you if you make a joke at a dinner table in your own home with your friends, and if somebody gets offended on behalf of somebody else from a different continent, they could call the police, they could come to the house, and they could arrest you for a joke. Just a joke. You could be arrested for a meme. Everything. But you can, if you're a First Minister, like the former First Minister, whom are useless, you can publicly in a chamber make a speech, make a racist speech against white people, saying Scotland's too white. Everybody's white. You can do that. You can. That's allowed, right? Because white people don't have rights. Christians don't have rights. That's natives in Scotland don't have rights. But the others can do whatever they want. And when the Vice President of the United States of America, J.D. Vance, when he points it out at the Munich Security Conference a few days ago, when the liberal media and establishment all had a meltdown, saying this is ridiculous, what is he talking about? It's not true, he's exaggerating. Well, we just showed you one example. We've seen many other examples. As a reminder, this is what he said.
This last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
He was right. Somebody in the live chats asked, how old is that lady? Rose, she is 74 years old. And apparently, as a 74-year-old Christian pensioner, she is so dangerous that we should use taxpayers' money to arrest her, to pay, because everything has a cost. Everything that the government does has a cost. Arrest her. And obviously, if she kicks off, if she continues, then charge her and send her to jail, even though we don't really have any space in our prison system. But, you know, we will for the 74-year-old Rose. We will make space, apparently, in our prison system for her. But, the violent criminals, they can be released early, because that's the message that this government is now sending to the world. And obviously, the Vice President of America is absolutely correct. Did they really need to use handcuffs, for example? Was she like resisting? What was the whole point? Was that so dangerous, that situation? Were they dealing with some sort of gangster that they had to put handcuffs on her and just take her to the car? Meaning, you can simply say, well, firstly, don't arrest her. That's the first thing you shouldn't do. But one thing you could do, say, okay, we would like you to come for questioning. What happened to ECHR rights, right? What happened to the European Convention on Human Rights? What happened to basic rights that we had before the creation of the European Convention on Human Rights? We helped give the Europeans the standards, the British standards when it comes to human rights. And now that's being used against us. It's absolutely disgusting. Now, this is what happens when you do devolution the way Tony Blair did. The devolution project, which was lied. They lied to the public. They said, yes, the United Kingdom is very centralized. Everything is in London. Let's give more power to local people everywhere, in Wales and Scotland, everywhere. What they actually did is they created secondary centralized bodies, in Holyrood, for example, in Scotland, and you just created more tyranny. They're doing what Westminster does anyway, but on steroid. You have not given any power to local people in Scotland. The power has gone to a secondary centralized body, which is as bad as Westminster. This is not decentralization. This is not localism. It's an illusion. And that's what they've done to this country. And of course, that's created more division as well. It was supposed to unite the kingdom. Did it? Tony Blair did not unite the kingdom. Tony Blair divided everything and everyone in this society. What do we have from you guys? John Johnson says, why is it okay for Muslims to set up stalls anywhere they like in our towns and cities, but a silent Christian prayer is intolerable? So the best way to actually compare this, John is right, but is to mention that we've seen many examples, for example, in central London, where Leicester Square, almost every night, you got the Islamic side with their stalls, doing what they do, right? And they one thing that Islam has is you can convert people instantly. It's like a fast food restaurant. It's like McDonald's. You could go in, you're converted. That's it, done. So they do that when you're there. They approach all these drunk teenagers who are going out in Leicester Square, and then they get them to give them a free Quran. If you want to convert to Catholicism, for example, I mean, let alone Judaism, you have to go through a process. You can't just randomly convert. And but having said that, they can do what they want with their megaphones, speaker, the whole music thing, the prayer. And then next to them, we usually also have nearby, every now and then, a Christian also preaching, just doing their own thing, just standing in a corner, one person, usually one Christian preacher, just preaching, right? That preacher, a number of them have been arrested so many times, while the Islamic side literally on the other corner with speakers and everything else, and they approach people more proactively. And obviously they also do, as I said, the fast food version of conversions. Just like, yeah, there we go, converted, you're Islamic. Like that, I don't think that's how it should work. But if you think someone's already converted by just you telling them, then anyway. Living near a clinic and praying is a crime. Living near a clinic, pray, yeah, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I mean, to be fair, when it comes to Scotland, it doesn't really matter where you live. Anywhere you live, you could accidentally commit a crime by making a joke. Jean says the government want us pensioners gone, so they don't have to pay our pensions. Well, we do know that, and we've heard it many times before from those, the elitist types, because they're not always just elected politicians. They could be political advisors, they could be civil servants, they could be NGOs, they could be corporations, they could be all these human rights groups, charities, philanthropists, people like George Soros, Alex Soros. We've heard so many times that they basically accidentally say pensioners are a burden. What they meant to say is the pension system is creating a burden, right? But that's what they mean, because pensioners are now living longer, they're a burden. They don't like it because they think, they see that, well, that's a bit of a cost, and what do we do about this? They forget about the fact that the pensioners actually worked for decades, so they've already paid into the system, they just want their money back, right? It's not new money, but the problem is all the governments already wasted that money that the pensioners paid through the tax system decades ago. All that money's gone. It's in Iraq, Afghanistan, and everywhere else, right? And Gaza. And now the rest of it is being spent on the foreigners coming here, so that's lovely. But the issue we have is that they can't say they hate pensioners when there's an election because pensioners vote. Pensioners are the most proactive voting bloc. So every party come out to make an announcement every time, Labour, Tory, all of them, saying, yes, of course, we're going to do double lock, triple lock, this, that, or we're going to protect the pensioners because they need the votes. And they get it. They always get it. How do you think Labour got elected? Do you really think it was like a bunch of young Islamic people voting for Labour? They alienated them so much because of Gaza. They didn't vote for them. Labour's share went down, even worse than Jeremy Corbyn's vote share. But you still had a massive group of pensioners who decided to vote Labour because they didn't like Rishi Sunak. Because as a voting bloc, the pensioners are the biggest group, the most proactive group. They decided to vote Labour because they didn't like the Tories, and the rest of them stayed at home. And by the way, I'm not saying all pensioners voted Labour. I'm saying that the big chunk of the voting bloc, even for Labour this time, was still the pensioners. So Labour had to say nice things about pensioners. But when they're in government, they see them as a burden. And that's a big problem. Same thing happens with the Tories. The Tories claim that they care about pensions, but they don't really have a solution. So they're like, well, there are voters, and there are my mothers, fathers, grandparents. They don't hate pensioners, not all of them. But the issue is, when they get into power, the centre-right, they also realize, it's a bit of a burden. It's not a burden. They're not a burden. Firstly, they're human beings. Secondly, they've already paid into the system. They've worked hard. They've done everything that they could. It's not that difficult to have a system to look after them. But again, we have other priorities. Sam says, I'm going to Scotland for a holiday in May. I'm an atheist. Couldn't care less about religion. Load of made up nonsense. That's fine though, right? That's absolutely fine. Everything's sorted. Sam's going to have a great time, guys. Everything's fine. What's that saying? First they came for the communists, that didn't say anything. Then they came for the Jews, that didn't say anything. And then when they came for me, there was no one to speak up for me. It's lovely, right? This is the problem with the Western European culture. The Western European culture, that includes some in the British mentality. We have a lot of beauty when it comes to the culture coming from Western Europe. And that created the Western civilization, modern version, and the US. But let's not forget, there are some weaknesses. Prejudice is one thing, which is, in terms of envy. We have politics of envy. And again, I'm not talking about every single person who's Western European, for the record. But there's a big chunk. We have this thing where we would, if someone knocks on the door and says, would you like, I don't know, a fat tax, taxing fat people? You would decide, I would say, okay, I don't like my neighbor next door because he's fat. So I'm going to say yes. Because of that. We've had the saying that in Britain or in Western Europe, in America, if you see your neighbor getting a Ferrari or I don't know, Lamborghini or so, a good car, you say, wow, well done. He worked hard. I'm going to work as hard and get the same thing. In Europe, the tendency is your neighbor gets a good car. You say, oh, that bastard, he's probably a crook. He's done something. He's probably stole it. I'm going to bring him down. That's the attitude. And when things happen to fellow citizens, we have a lot of people like Sam saying, I don't care what happens to 74-year-old Rose. I don't care about her individual liberties. I'm fine. I'm going on holiday. I'm fine because I'm an atheist. It's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to get arrested for anything. I have all my freedoms. It's just that 74-year-old Rose who's basically a terrorist for being a Christian, right? Because her religion is made up. So because of that, I'm going to have hatred against her. So yeah, you can arrest her. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to go to Scotland in May for a holiday, and the government is going to love me there. They're definitely not going to do anything against me. Yeah. Someone says, "Oi, leave us fatties alone." Fatty lives matter. No, there's a point to be made here, because that's the whole thing. People will have prejudice. They allow their own, for example, envy or prejudice to basically dictate policy for the others. And that happens all the time. Just because you don't like something, you don't like this, you say, I'll ban this for everybody else. Why? What's it got to do with you? Just don't get it. Well, we do it all the time. Anyway. Beatsmith says, Bayer, voting UKIP for the first time. Shame on the SNP for arresting a pensioner for prayer. It's just the beginning of this messed up situation. Let's get some super chats. I missed them. Sorry, guys. Tesbot, thank you. Saying, FFS. Make it make sense. Yeah, ask Sam. Dexter from Australia says, commercial flights in the Tasman Sea have received a message from 3 Chinese warships that they would be conducting exercises and possibly live fire. The Tasman Sea is between Australia and New Zealand. Thank you so much for that. Gary Buchanan says, Yusuf, the most racist brat in Scotland, Shame on the Scottish police for lifting the old lady needing to do their job. But look at the police lady. The police lady. Did we say police lady? Lady policeman. Police lady. She wouldn't catch anyone who ran away from her police. Yeah, fair. Oh, that's a good point, Diane. I'm sure our past queen would be turning in her grave. She would probably just be like, what is going on? Because she could see towards the end what was happening to the country. And, you know, she couldn't speak out publicly when it comes to policy. But she was from a whole different world. And she would have found this... I mean, not just Elizabeth. Let's not forget my favorite, Philip. Prince Philip would have been like, just sell Scotland at this point. Privatize Scotland. Also, I do... every time we talk about Scotland, I do need to clarify. Let's not forget. The media want you to believe that the SNP represent all Scotland, and the Scottish Scotnat nutters are representing everybody in Scotland. Let's not forget that the majority in Scotland are still great people who are unionists, who are conservative-minded, even if they're not necessarily Tory, but they are traditionalists, and they believe in freedom and they hate the SNP. Every single opinion poll and result of referendum and election shows that the majority, just about, but still the majority, just about, they are not Scotnats. They're not the SNP. They're not isolationists. They're not. They don't believe in segregation, all that nonsense. So, despite what the media want you to think when they show the crazies in Scotland saying, "Oh yes, we hate the English," or this or that, and then some people in England would say, "Oh well, F Scotland." You know, all the Scottish people are the same. No, they're not. Just over 50% would disagree with the crazies. Another one says, I'm a proud Scotsman and Christian. It's disgusting that the SNP and other far left or communist Islamists that's ruining our country. See? Point proven. Absolutely. Yes, be proud of your heritage. Yeah, that's a good point again. Seriously, handcuffs for an old lady who is by any standard no threat to anyone. That's just, she wasn't even kicking off when they were talking to her. She wasn't even resisting anything. Nick says they didn't put handcuffs on the guy who shouted out "Free Palestine" in London yesterday. Yeah, well, it's his country now, right? Karine says, can we have a Salter flag behind you? Well, someone could send me one. When speaking about Scotland, please. No, because we have this already. The whole point of the unionism is to have all the flags in one flag. I'm not going to do segregation. Love you all in Scotland. It's not like I'm going to put England flag every time I talk about England. That the whole point of the kingdom is the kingdom. But obviously, when it's if Scotland goes to war with England, then yeah, we'll do the separate flags. That would be nice. Nothing against the Scottish flag, because I actually quite like it. It's quite nice. And the history behind it is important. Let's see. Oh, it's about Sam. Sam thinks the Islamists will spare the atheists. It's the same as the LGBTQXYZ. You forgot W and D. Marching for Islam. In the words of the millennials, true that. Alright, Bill Anderson says the PC failed to give caution, code C10.1, before questions asked. I think the video might have been cut, I think. They was a little bit trimmed, maybe. But he did give caution after he asked her question. Oh, caution must be before the question, yes. Meaning any words cannot be used in a statement, CPS won't touch it. Well, that's good for her then. Yeah, I didn't actually pay attention to that part of the video. So thank you, Bill Anderson, for helping us with that. I'll go watch it again later. Because, yeah. I mean, what is it a surprise that the police would be incompetent, even when it comes to arresting people? It's not the first time, is it? It's like when they dragged Tommy Robinson out of the place where he was having breakfast in London last year. And they dragged him using 30 police officers. And one of them pepper sprayed him. And somehow, the report, and firstly, the body cam that was on the police stopped working. Coincidence. When the pepper spray happened. And then when they messed up in court, the police came out and said, oh, sorry, we were dyslexic. Everybody suddenly became dyslexic. You can't use that as an excuse. Just be better. Don't be corrupt. Right. Zach says they deserve to be here if the government's letting them in. What is it? Is it about the Islamists? I don't think that's how it should work. I don't. In a civilized country, I don't really think you should just say, if the government does something, we should just say yes. The governments come up with stupid policies. They always come up with, like, for example, if they open the borders without any mandate, then, for example, what Angela Merkel did in 2015, that's not representing the people. That is not democracy. You can't just say, well, the government did it, so they deserve to be. No. Government should be governing on behalf of the public, the majority. Always put the majority above the minority. You cannot put the minority above the majority. It just defeats the whole purpose. Someone said dyslexia doesn't mean you can't read. No, I think the excuse was the person who wrote the initial report on Tommy on the day was dyslexic. Put the wrong date and the wrong time or the wrong charge. It made no sense. It was just nonsense. Oh, God. Oh, my God. What is going on? We got some anti-Scottish tendencies. Someone said most Scottish people are inbred. I can scientifically prove it's not true, by the way. It's not the 18th century. That explains the rampant alcoholism and plain ignorance. Okay, there are many places in the world that also have many people who are ignorant. Firstly, most issues in societies is not all people. You have different cultural classes. You got people, for example, if somebody, I don't know, with all due respect to the people I'm going to insult now, we believe in equality, I equally insult everyone. If, I don't know, some sort of intellectual, academic French person or Canadian, weird example, meet some chav from, I don't know, East London or Essex, right? With a very certain lovely accent and a certain level of behavior. If they think all English people are like that, then that will be a bit of a problem. Or if they meet someone, because that's a stereotype in movies and TV shows. You either meet Brits as a character who are basically well-spoken, and so they have to be villains, or they have this like weird accent that doesn't exist anymore, like in terms of everyday. No, it doesn't work that way. So you have different cultural classes, you have different tribes in every country, every society, yeah, not all English are the same, and not all Scots are the same. Alistair says, we hate the English because of what they've done to us for years upon years. You do realize the people right now in England and the people in Scotland have nothing to do with what happened a few hundred years ago. Absolutely nothing. It's the same with the Black Lives Matter movement, saying, oh, well, I'm a black person. Firstly, most of the Black Lives Matter movements in America, they're mixed race. They're not actually black. You can see they're not actually black anyway. But they say, well, yeah, I'm oppressed because of what the white people did before. What's that got to do with you? Firstly, it's not even your ancestors, only half of your family's ancestors. And firstly, the other half of your family also oppressed the other side, basically. But the white people are alive now had nothing to do with that. And the black people are alive now have nothing to do with that. It's the same with the Scotland-England thing. Like, nothing to do with you. It was a while ago. It's different. You can't blame a random person who happened to accidentally be born in England. You can't really choose where you're born, by the way. Say, well, you're born in England, I'm going to hate you. Or vice versa, saying, well, Scotland, they keep playing the victim card. If you're born in Scotland, I'm going to blame you. It's just idiocy. This is how you divide society. Oh, my God. It's one of those days, guys. One of those days. All right. Do we have any sanity in the comment section? Kenny says, if she held up a verse from the Quran, would she be arrested as it wouldn't be Islamophobic? No, she would be praised. There's double standards here. The thing is, it's not really just speculation. It's happened before. I just gave you the examples of the schools in Birmingham, Leicester, Leeds, where the Islamic parents basically complained. And, well, firstly, there's still the grammar school teacher in Batley who's still in hiding. He can't come out. It's been years now because they want to kill him for teaching about Mo and the book. I mean, it's insane. Never been so happy to be from the US. Oh, God, you should be. The Americans watching this, always be proud of where you're from. Look at Europe after hearing this video. I love the history and castles of England and Scotland. So sad the Christians are persecuted. The thing is, it's the media and everybody else is still in denial. So they're basically saying, no, nothing is happening. There's absolutely no crackdown. No hatred against Christianity. Christians are not being undermined. I mean, even Church of England's undermining Christianity at this point. It's embarrassing. Anyway, we could talk about this all day, but we have to take a break and come back later with more updates. We're going to have some more updates about what's going on in Israel, because guess what? Hamas in Gaza are now demanding Israel to return the corpse that they gave them yesterday, because that was in Shiri Bibas. The body's missing. But Hamas now want the corpse back. I know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.